Okay, today we're gonna edit and color correct this boxing shot. I took at the MTK Global Brentwood show. The two boxers are Shaq Day in the black shorts and Casey Benjamin in the white, gold, and black shorts. The first thing I like to do when I'm analyzing a photo is understand the color that's actually in there. Now, at first glance, we can see we have some reds, we have black, we have gold, we have white, we have some blues going on. But you'd be surprised at what's in there that we can't see, because computers and cameras see color in a slightly different way than the human eye does. So in order to understand it, we're going to use something called Adobe Color Wheel. Here I've loaded, this is an online resource. You can see color.adobe.com, and you can go in and you can load an image into here. Now this is a really interesting thing. What we can do is we can move these little dots around and place them on places that we feel are significant in terms of color, that will highlight the different colors in there. So I would say, just looking for sort of like a blue there, I think is kind of interesting. We've got the white of the shorts. We've kind of got this gold thing going on here. We've got the red of the gloves. We've got Shaq's skin tone. And I feel actually maybe we need one on Casey, because Casey's got a slightly lighter skin tone. And then we've got the blue there of the MTK kind of corner banner. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to call that Shaq 2. I'm going to save that theme. By the way, you can choose to publish your themes if you want to. It's entirely up to you. So now I'm going to just press save. Now we go back to Photoshop, and I'm going to go into My Themes, Libraries, and there it is right there. Color theme Shaq 2. I'm going to edit this theme. Now what that gives me is the wheel. Now straight away what I'm going to do is, to understand these colors, I'm going to pull out what these are, these sliders. So I can see I've got two oranges there. I've got kind of a red that's heading towards magenta there. I'm gonna press this key here, select active there, and that puts that there. So this, I'm now going to go over to the color slider. These are the HSL sliders, and I'm going to pull that right up. And then I'm going to say there. So that color there, that's actually magenta, and somewhere in the magenta and purples, which is not something I was expecting. So now we're going to go back here, set there, and then it comes up here. I'm going to pull this one up, which kind of looks like a beige color. If you can see here, that looks like a beige color. And if we pull the saturation all the way up on there, it is in fact another orange color. And then I'm going to set that there. So now we've got a kind of strange spread of colors here. And I kind of want to use that. I may go for an analogous color scheme, which is kind of, if you don't know what analogous is, an analogous color scheme is when you've got a family of colors that are all very similar within the spectrum. Now in this case, I would lose this purple tone and try and bring this purple tone round here, so we were all the colors were kind of living in the spectrum of orange. So let's just see as a kind of example of how that would look. Okay, so now I am going to go to my layer here. I'm going to dupe this layer by pressing Command J, and now we've got a duplicate of the layer. The reason I'm doing that is so I can flick between these two layers and show you where we started and where we ended up. Okay, so now first things first, I'm going to look at shifting these colors and getting them a bit closer together. And the thing that I'm going to start on first is the gloves and I'm going to shift these towards an orange tone. So what we do is we go down, we select hue saturation layer, which pops up there. Now I'm pretty sure that these are going to be living inside the red, which are these ones here. This is this, and then I'm going to select reds here, so I'm only affecting the reds inside the frame, which are the skin tones and the gloves. Now, so I'm going to reset that to 0 there, and now I'm just going to shift this slider over, and I'm going to take the gloves so they are about there. Now you can see that it's affected everything else and it kind of looks really strange, but I'm just focused on the gloves. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the mask here. I'm going to press Command I and invert that layer. That makes it invisible. I'm now just going to kind of zoom in, and I am going to select the brush tool, which is if you just press here, there you go, there's the brush tool, and I'm going to make sure that this is set to white. This means that I'll be able to paint into the mask. Now I'm going to set my opacity. I'm just going to go for 100%, and now I'm just going to carefully shade this in. Now normally if I was doing this, taking more time over this, I would actually cut these gloves out so the painting was perfect. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to bosh it in real quick. So I'm just going to paint this in like that. You can see, and by the way, you can make the circle bigger and smaller quickly just by using the bracket keys. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Now you can see there's a little bit of spill there. So what I'm going to do is I go down here, I flip it across, or you can just press X, and I'm just going to fill that back in just to get rid of that spill. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we're going to zoom out. Already in my mind, you see that this orange is really harmonizing a bit more with the yellow of his shorts and the skin tones. It is kind of working a little bit better. Okay, now I am going to now look at the blues. So again, I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to go to Hue Sat. I'm going to select blues. And we're just going to, there you go, you see right away that is really, you can see if I pull that saturation down, the blues completely disappear. So I'm just going to see what we can do with these by shifting the hue. And if I can get it to, yeah, I'm just looking at the, now what I can do is just pull that into, I would say the thing to do, if we're going to go for an analogous color scheme, we're going to bring it all into the reds and the oranges. And I'm just going to set it about there. Yep, and that gives us a kind of red. That takes away the blue. Now you can see the whole image, all of these blues will now turn quite a pinky colour. So I'm not quite sure about that. So I am going to maybe go, that kind of looks good. So I'm actually taking this away from the analogous colour screen now. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing this bluey sort of magenta-y, purpley tone, and I'm bringing it around here. So now that gives us a complementary color scheme because we've got oranges. A complementary color scheme are two colors that are the opposite sides to each other in the color wheel. So for example, this is a orange here. There is the greeny sort of aqua color, which I think looks really nice for this actually. So we're going to go in this direction, I think, for this. So again, I am going to Command Command I on this layer. I'm going to go Command I, and I'm just gonna just get rid of that for a minute. I'm just going to paint this in like that again, doing it real quick, like that. And actually, I've probably wasted my time a bit there because I could have just there you go. I'm just doing this real quick, but actually I could have just left that and not bothered doing a mask because it kind of pretty much only affected these areas anyway. But anyway, so you can see it there. So for me, this is looking really good now. And now I want to kind of examine. I'm going to just check my wheel now. Now I've kind of brought that round here, so we're now in a complementary color scheme. Now I just want to see what I can do with these yellows. So again, I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to go for another hue sat layer. And this time I'm going to look at yellows. Let's just check this affects his shorts. Yes, it does. Okay, so I'll just put that to, just take that back to 0. And now I'm just going to play around with these and see what happens. I kind of want to perhaps just put a little bit of a hint of blue. I'm actually pushing a little bit of blue into these here. And if I, there we go, and I'm just bringing up just dialing down the saturation just a fraction, just so it's not so hot. Now that's that looks nice. So I'm going to go Command I, and then we're just going to focus on the shots. And again, I'm doing this really quickly, bit of a cowboy job, but this is just I'm painting this stuff in just so you can see the process. Again, making this little small by pressing the bracket keys. There we go. And again, I just like that little bit of blue in there. It's very subtle, but for me, it kind of makes a big difference. And it brings the colors in the frame together, which I think is really kind of important, especially for the eye when people look at stuff. So now already that's kind of looking pretty good, I think. Now the skin tones, I'm really reluctant to alter those too much, but let's have a little play because I just think the skin tones, especially Canon cameras, are pretty good. They're pretty accurate. But again, we'll throw on another hue sat layer. This time we'll have a look at the reds, which I'm sure that they'll be in. There you go, see, bang. So, you know, we can make these, we can make the skin any color you like, really. But I think if we just push that, I think I'm just going to tweak the saturation on these. We could go a bit colder with it, but I just like it warmer. So just a little bit of +3 there, and I think that looks really nice. Okay, so that's in a pretty good place, I think, color-wise. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, again, I've masked that layer. I'm going to bring this up, and I'm just going to paint in that saturation layer. It's very, very subtle, but it will make a difference. There is something else I'm going to do to the skin in a minute, to the skin to make it stand out a bit more. So I'm just going to do that. I'm not so fussed about the legs because I'm going to crop this image. So we're a lot tighter in on the action. Okay, so I've sort of done that. I'm pretty pleased with that. Now for me, the boxers need to stand out a bit more. So I'm going to now add a curves layer to the proceedings. The curves control the lightness and the darkness of the image, and you can do all sorts of weird things to them. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to push up the top, and you can see the boxes are getting lighter, but the whole image is getting lighter. But I'm just focused on the boxes, and I just want to give them about that much, and I might just pull this down just a little bit, and that brings a bit of kick to it, a bit of contrast to it. And if I just like that, I kind of like that. And again, with this, like with all the other layers, Command I. Now we've got 100% opacity. We've got it on there. I'm going to reduce this a little bit. I'm going to take it down to about 84, and I'm going to just start painting in. The most important thing is the boxers' faces. Just bringing those guys back. And actually, I'm going to go 100% because these skin tones, unlike on Shaq's, got quite a dark skin tone. So I really want to bring them out. And I'm going to just highlight the bodies now. Again, I'm doing this very quickly. You should really cut these guys out. There are other things, but I'm just showing you the quick and dirty route. So now it'd be great to really highlight Casey's face because he's getting the Shaq's landing on him here, and we're bringing out the skin tones. And what this does is this separates the boxes from the background a little bit, which I think is nice, especially like these shorts. It really just brightens these shorts up, and it really makes them pop, that curved layer. And they just look great. And we'll do the same for Shaq's because Shaq's got very dark shorts. And what that will do is it will just help the highlights really on Shaq's shorts there. And he's got a little bit of detail in them that we kind of want to see. I'd probably do an actual separate layer for his shorts if I was going to spend more time on this because they're dark. They need probably more detail bringing out. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to just close this for a second, and now I am going to go to our layer here, and I'm going to do filter, and I'm going to go to a thing I like to use called Smart Sharpen, and I use this very sparingly. If I can zoom in here. What I like to do is add a tiny amount of sharpening. And I'm going to add sort of, let's just say, now there's a little bit of a lag here, but you can see that's just kicked in. It's just given me a tiny little edge. I always have my radius up high. Noise reduction, I only have a very, very small amount. Okay, so I'm going to okay that. Now, okay, so we're now already looking pretty good. If I switch this off, yeah, that's looking really nice. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that layer. And if I turn off all these layers, that's where we were. Okay, and this is where we are now. So I should have grouped these layers, so that was a bit slicker. So I think this is really coming together as an image. Little finicky things like this green here. If I was going to spend more time, I would change that little green thing there because that to me now stands out too much. But anyway, okay, so now we've got this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to here. I'm going to crop this image. It's very wide. This was shot on a 24mm to 70mm Canon zoom lens, which is the standard boxing photography lens. We also use 70 to 200 mils, but that's very we only pull those out when the box is cut and we want to get close-ups of faces. And so there is a lot of cropping that goes on in boxing photography. It's just one of those things. The best boxing photographers in the world all crop because you've got to just keep photographing the action and not stop, basically, because boxing moves fast, it's erratic. You can miss a critical moment in the fight in a heartbeat. So you just got to keep shooting. Okay, so now I'm going to crop this image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it into a kind of classic, almost, I don't want to lose too much of the shorts. I kind of like that. It's a bit of a square frame. Now, there's probably many people that would crop it about there. And I kind of like that. Yeah, let's just see how that looks. Yeah, so we pop that up and we've got a pretty good frame there. That's really nice, I think. And that's great. Okay, so now we're really getting there with this. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to minimize this window a little bit. I am going to group these layers. So I select them all. I'll actually make sure that one is not selected. So I just command click on these. This is probably a quicker way of doing it. Group those layers. Now if I switch that off, that's where we were. That's where we are now. That's where we were. That's where we are now. Now if I was going to be a little bit hypercritical of this, I'd go back to this layer. And I would go back into camera raw filter because I think the highlight's just a little bit too blown. Oh, wrong one, sorry. So go here, camera raw filter. These highlights are blown. That's just boxing photography. It's difficult to sometimes contain the highlights, but I'm just going to take it down a few notches there, and that's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm going to deselect all these layers, and I'm going to create another layer with all of these layers. So I'm going to press Command Option Shift E, and that gives me this layer up here. And now I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go to High Pass, the old high pass filter, which gives you crunch and sharpness. And I'm gonna set that. I like to have it around 120. That's just me. You can sort of play around with it. So you press OK, then you go to your blend modes. Now, typically the best blend mode to use, the two best blend modes to use are soft light and hard light. I very rarely use hard light. So I'm going to go for the soft light, and that is, you can see what it's done to it. It's made it more contrasty. It's given it more punch, more crunch. That's probably a bit too much. So I'm going to go here to the opacity, and I'm just going to dial it down to 0. So that's where we were. And I'm just going to lift that up just a little bit. And I kind of look at it, and I'm just going to sort of leave it about 25%. And if I switch that off, it's just subtle. You can see what it's doing there, hopefully, but it's just subtle. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. And I'll switch that off there. And then if I switch off this, you can see where we were, where we are now, where we were, where we are now, where we were, where we are now. So that to me is looking pretty good. Now, what I'm going to do now is I am going to select all these layers. Actually, not that one, that one, that one. Control right click. And I'm going to merge these layers. So I've now merged these layers. This is now one image. Before, after. Before, after. Now what I like to do is I'm going to go back into the camera filter, and I'm going to go back into the camera raw filter, and I'm just going to knock up that contrast just a fraction, and I'm going to reduce I'm just going to take the edge off the saturation because it was just a little bit too punchy. And there we have it. So you've got a very simple sort of editorial boxing image there. I could have, if I was providing this for a magazine, I would have definitely have kept the color scheme closer to the original photo, so the gloves would have been red and all the colours would have been true, so it was a much more of an editorial image. But sometimes it's nice to stylize images if you're going to use them on social media, or you want to print them, or whatever you want to do with them. So that's it really. So there you go. That is after, that is before. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and thanks very much for tuning in.